The World Health Organization has developed a new tool to help diagnose and determine diseases that pose a big public health risk.
And it came in response to the Ebola outbreak back in 2014. Joining us with a look at some of the research is Dr. Fabi. Dr. Fabi, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, so this is called the R&D Blueprint. I'm assuming that stands for Research and Development, but
Yes.
I could be wrong. Talk to me about this.
It actually was published last month, and so what scientists are trying to do is take a more active role to prevent diseases that can have a very large outbreak and kill many, like we saw with the Ebola virus. The largest outbreak we've had since 1976, when it was actually first diagnosed, where 26,000 people were diagnosed back about 3 years ago when we first covered the story, and 11,000 people died in Africa. And so in an effort to try to prevent outbreaks like this, because generally when these types of diseases come, they come about from a family of viruses, which are all part of the same family. So if you can genetically code that entire family, then scientists believe they have a better tool or blueprint to be able to identify vaccines to rapidly respond to a new outbreak of disease.
So can you kind of play out for us how exactly it works, and also, like you said, you're talking about prevention, not just getting more insight, right?
Exactly. And so what they do now is researchers as well as scientists and doctors are all collaborating to first look at the diseases that can have the widest spread. They can quickly transmit because most human transmission. And also diseases that presently don't have a cure, whether it's a vaccine or some form of medicine to actually treat it. So once they kind of look at the list, then they basically identify and strategize which diseases you have to put like effort in to basically come up with a vaccine or some type of medicine to identify quickly first. So that's like the blueprint. And then they also plan for something called a disease X.
Okay,
which is a disease basically that we don't know necessarily actually exists presently, but they recognize we don't always know what we don't know, right? So there may be a disease that can mutate from one of the diseases that already exists that may cause the next outbreak.
So are they sort of creating like a database of information that I would assume the CDC obviously is playing a role in conjunction with the World Health Organization, but all these different kind of players like adding to it and the research that they get so they can come up with this one solid central piece of information?
Exactly. They're trying to work together more as a world, right? Because these diseases now really affect us globally. They're not just limited to Africa, like we saw with Ebola virus, right? And so what they're trying to do is basically identify the gene of these particular families of viruses so that they can plug it into some type of platform so that when the next disease hits, they can quickly get that blood from whoever may have it, identify the DNA of that particular virus, plug it into their system, and create a vaccine rapidly to prevent widespread transmission. Because it took 12 months to really come up with a cure for Ebola last time it hit.
Right.
And that's
then you talk about Zika that we had more recently, and that too was so long that there was no, in fact there isn't still really a cure, and Zika was a big deal.
Exactly, and so that's what they're working on right now.
What if it could apply to the flu situation too? Because the flu vaccine, they do it like almost a year in advance, and sometimes, as we've seen many times, it's not the right matchup.
And that's the thing, and you're absolutely right. Even then, it still takes 12 months, because usually the development of a vaccine takes 5 to 10 years.
Really interesting. Dr. Fabi, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys.